You're listening to Ride Rehab on WDWNT.com. And now, here are your hosts, Tyler Mann and Thomas Kiernan.
Welcome to Ride Rehab. I'm Tyler Mann.
And I'm Thomas Kiernan.
And today we're recording this episode from inside the abandoned animation studios at Disney's Hollywood Studios.
If you look through the little windows that DreamWorks used to spy on Disney through, you can see us. Hi.
What's up? Anyways, today we're doing an entire episode about Hollywood Studios. The vision of Hollywood that Michael Eisner wanted in his head, but isn't actually Hollywood because Hollywood doesn't actually exist anymore. Or it didn't either in like the 80s when they opened the park.
The metaphorical Hollywood. Yeah, I understand that. That was something that kind of needed to be explained to me later because I didn't understand the Hollywood Boulevard with all the characters there. And I didn't understand why they were there, if they were meant to be parodies of famous people or just characters. But if they're just characters of what it's meant to be like in Hollywood, then suddenly that all makes more sense.
Before we go on with our tour of Hollywood Studios, where we decide what we're going to rehab and what's good and what we would change, let's take just a brief history of Hollywood Studios for those who don't know. Imagineers had designed a great movie ride pavilion for Epcot. However, ever since Disney's best friend, Michael Eisner, decided it should be its own theme park, they just made this entire idea. So it opened up in 1989. It had a working film, TV, and animation studio, all of which are now almost completely gone. The theme of the park was dedicated to like a fantastical version of Hollywood, but now it's mostly just Star Wars. They had distinct areas of the park which included Hollywood Boulevard, Echo Lake, Grand Avenue, the almost defunct Pixar Place, the almost defunct Animation Courtyard, and the soon-to-be Marvel Land Sunset Boulevard. Future areas of the park are going to include Star Wars Land, otherwise known as Galaxy's Edge, otherwise known as Batuu, and Toy Story Land, otherwise known as Andy's Backyard, otherwise known as We Had No More Budget. So let's start off with, I remember going to this park in 1997 and being scared by almost everything. I did not want to go in the Indiana Jones Stunt Show, but I remember my dad being a part of it. I remember the great movie ride scaring me because there was a lot of scary parts in it, like the alien. And I never wanted to even go near the Tower of Terror because it also looked terrifying. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of scary stuff in the park from back then. But now it's like 90% Star Wars, and I really, really hate that. And I'm sure other people do as well. Well, let's start with the theme of the park overall. When it opened, it was, this is a real working movie studio here in Florida, of all places, and we're going to take you behind the scenes of the movies and the TV shows and music and everything that you watch and all the kind of products you consume. But now it has turned into, we are going to place you in these stories. It's no longer about how movies are made, but you are in the movie at the moment, which was what Universal's theme was, which is ride the movies, which is odd.
If I may, my theory for the reason of the change from being in the movies to seeing how movies are made, I think it's because before, how movies are made was not, I don't want to say common knowledge, but it was not as sort of widely known. There weren't a lot of behind-the-scenes DVD featurettes.
We didn't see a lot of making-ofs.
Exactly. And so now the idea is escapism. We are taking that aspect of movies and turning it into a physical place where you can escape your troubles for a few hours.
People can make a movie on their phone in like 10 minutes now.
Precisely.
The way movies are made have also changed.
Yes, the way movies are made have changed exponentially, even from when the park opened.
And they never updated anything.
I do like that slice of old Hollywood because it harkens back to a simpler time, where we have a lot more dynamic characters.
Let's start there, actually.
Okay,
because we have three distinct sort of Hollywood areas, which is Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, and then Echo Lake, which are all sort of based on actual places or inspired by actual places. So as soon as you walk into the park, you're at Hollywood Boulevard, which is a common street in Hollywood. We see the Man's Chinese Theater all the way at the end. And no, I'm not going to make a man's joke because my last name is also Man with two N's. But we see the Chinese Theater in the distance and all these shops that you can actually go into and buy and shop and everything. And at that time they had parades sort of around this area as well. Like it felt old Hollywood, and it still does. Like it's like Main Street, where it evokes this feeling of a place, but not any specific actual place or any specific time.
And that's kind of the Star Trek of the park, where it's like, this is what we can be, and it's just a representation of what we hope movie making is like, but then it's nothing like that at all. From especially this past year or so, we've discovered the seedier underbelly of the Hollywood machine.
Yes, and we'll talk about the overall theme on this episode as well.
Yes,
because obviously there's so much you can do with this park. It does not need to be Hollywood, and we know Disney's already tried to change that with very little success. But the thing that always kind of weirded me about the park was that the entry gate was pretty simple. Like when we have Main Street, we have the Main Street train station. We walk through the tunnel, and then we have to like sort of come out. We see these attraction posters teasing us into the park. All the other parks don't really have like a spectacular entryway because they have that big, as Disney likes to call it, weenie in the middle that draws your eye or draws you to that part of the park. Like in this case, it's the Man's Chinese Theater. We have the Tree of Life in Animal Kingdom, and then we have Spaceship Earth at Epcot. But we don't have like a spectacular entry gate for these parks. I guess you don't need one, but it would look a little bit nicer maybe if it was themed to like a studio that you're walking through. If that's sort of like you are going into the movies, make the entry gate a studio. Disney Paris actually has that. Their Main Street is in an enclosed studio building. But everything in there is actual shops and stuff. It's just enclosed in a building. That Hollywood Boulevard street, I mean, there's not really anything that really stands out. I don't know. I would never really spend a lot of time there. There's sort of that Crossroads of the World statue that's directly in the middle. It's very small, though. That's just where you pick up your maps. That's based on a real monument, but it's not like anything spectacular. I'm not like the characters in Planet Coaster where I set like a little waypoint and everyone comes around and starts taking photos, even though it's really nothing. There's nothing really spectacular about the intro that main Hollywood Boulevard street until you get to at least Sunset Boulevard or the Chinese Theater at the front. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the Chinese Theater then, because it's a very good recreation.
I can't agree or disagree because I've never seen the real Chinese Theater. So for all I know, it could look like a horrible, cheap ripoff.
Well, what's good about it is the fact that it's an existing building that doesn't exist anywhere in Florida or anywhere near there. You'd have to go to California to see the real thing. So obviously, when you go to Florida, you could basically say, I was at the Man's Chinese Theater. Look at it. There it is. And there's real handprints and everything. I thought that was the most impressive thing, was that when a celebrity comes, they actually put their handprints into the ground, and they've kept that all these years, which is super cool. Is it the best representation of what Hollywood is? If I were to rehab this, I would have a movie studio with sort of like a forced perspective Hollywood Hills sign. Because that's what people think about when they think of Hollywood, is that actual sign itself, the one that used to say Hollywood Land, but then the land got destroyed, and then BoJack Horseman stole the D. Anyways, if I would change that area, I would put in Hollywood Hills and a studio. But I mean, should we talk about Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway?
I think we have to if we're going to talk about the Great Movie Ride. So, obviously, talking about how the Great Movie Ride needs to be rehabbed is a bit pointless. Since
because it's gone already.
It's gone. Let's just throw this out into the open. I'm not a Disney expert. I'm not going to pretend to be a Disney expert. But do you know what that grants me? That grants me a certain sense of distance, and it means I'm not loyal to anything. It means that I will say, you know what? Maybe the old movie ride was boring and shitty. Who knows? But the point is that I am ready to abandon old things without hesitation. I say without hesitation. There are a few things that I really like, but
Disney let the past die, and they killed it if they had to, which they did.
Yeah, they did kill it. I will talk with my limited knowledge of the Great Movie Ride.
I don't think they needed to get rid of it. I thought that was a very bad idea. We have a beautiful thing called Animation Courtyard where your animated themed ride could have gone. They really wanted to change Great Movie Ride, or we know there was a lot of problems with sort of the Turner Classic Movies sponsorship that they had at the last couple years or so. So we have you on one end of that spectrum of movie ride, and then on the other end we have basically Tom Corliss, who absolutely with his whole heart thinks that Disney made a gigantic mistake. Let me sort of be the middle ground. There was parts of Movie Ride that were great. Great Movie Ride sort of tied everything around the park together. Here is where the spirit of movies sort of lived. We are journeying into the movies, and we're going to see it from all the way back to like Footlight Parade, and then all the way to the end where we see the montage of all these new movies that had come out since that time, and then everything in between was just classics that could not be touched. Singin' in the Rain, Casablanca, Fantasia, Mary Poppins, Wizard of Oz, Alien, all these movies that actually were so impactful and still are impactful today. Great Movie Ride tied all that together into a neat bow so that the centerpiece of the park, that Chinese theater, had this ride in it that it was an example of the park. Epcot has Spaceship Earth, which represents communication and how all of us grew as a planet, basically.
It is about the advancements in technology that we have made, which is what basically the entirety of Epcot is about. Basically.
And there's this feeling that ties it all together. In Animal Kingdom, we have the Tree of Life, and what better way to represent nature and animals than a tree? Mm-hmm. And then we have the Magic Kingdom's castle, which also just sort of is this testament to what Walt wanted. He wanted this giant castle in the middle of the park, and somehow it worked with every single area around it as well. It was that standout centerpiece. People don't see fantasy castles, and here is one. And then Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is not going to represent anything of what Hollywood Studios was or is.
The Great Movie Ride does not need to be those movies, in this humble person's opinion. And especially now, look at the movies that Disney has bought. The movies that impacted filmmaking up until now, that are now under the Disney umbrella. We have Indiana Jones, we have Star Wars, easily one of the biggest. What else did they buy?
They have the rights to Avatar.
They have the rights to Avatar, the highest grossing movie until Star Wars.
All the Marvel films that are money makers.
The Marvel films aren't
such a huge way.
The Marvel films aren't really old enough to be the staples of cinema now. I mean, obviously now they are.
They are going to be.
They are going to be because 20 years from now they're going to look back and be like, man, those guys were sure obsessed with superheroes. Hey, Ron, you mind giving me some of that irradiated rat meat? Sure, John.
Are we in Fallout?
Yeah, because by then we've devolved and the human race has destroyed itself in 20 years. The point is that those movies can be replaced. But by giving it not only Mickey Mouse and the new version of Mickey Mouse, it just feels out of place is probably the best way to put it.
It's out of place. It absolutely is
out of place in such a way that it is, when you're looking at something and you see, like, I don't know, let's say you're looking at the Mona Lisa and then you notice a peanut stuck to the Mona Lisa or something or a cashew, you would be like, hey, that doesn't belong there. How did that get there? What?
A peanut stuck to the Mona Lisa.
But like, or any famous painting, if it had like something stuck to it that clearly doesn't belong there, it's not the point where it's disturbing, but where it's disquieting, where it's weird and clear, and your entire brain says, no, that doesn't go there. What I'm saying is the replacement for the Great Movie Ride is like a peanut stuck to the Mona Lisa.
You're right.
It's like someone saw it and just was like, I can make it better. Do you know what it is? It's Marcel Duchamp's Mona Lisa, where he painted a mustache on the Mona Lisa. But the difference is that Marcel Duchamp had something to say about the nature of art,
yes.
Whereas this is just painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa for the sake of painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa.
Someone painted a Mickey Mouse head over all the animatronics on the Great Movie Ride.
Someone painted Mickey Mouse ears on Errol Flynn or Judy Garland.
The thing is that if this ride, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, here's the thing. It's going to be great. I think it's going to be such a fun ride.
That's the thing.
Based on everything that WDWNT leaked about what's going to happen on the ride, it's going to be a fun ride. It's just, it did not belong in that house.
Yes.
What would we put in that house,
yes.
though? I would update the Great Movie Ride with just all new animatronics and all new areas. I would keep it Disney. Like, they tried to go for things they don't own because they wanted to make it sort of a representation of all Hollywood, which is fine.
Yeah, that's understandable. And it would have made sense at the time when studios were a bit more collaborative and more willing to let their properties mingle a bit, because it was always like, oh, more publicity for our movie? Sure thing. But now it's a bit more, no, this is mine, and I will make all the money for it. Even if it means that we're going to change copyright laws for 150 years.
I would just update it. Like, all you needed to do was put in brand new animatronics, which there's a lot of, but obviously Disney can afford it if they're going to make such a huge change to a major icon of this park. And I would just update all the animatronics, make it all Disney properties, and you could say, like, here's the history of Disney films, starting all the way back at, like, I don't know, Flowers and Trees or Steamboat Willie, all these sort of iconic cartoons, and then work its way up. Here's some live action movies. Do you remember some of these? And just have animatronics. Here's the computer that wore tennis shoes, and remember that monkey who just, like, murdered people? I don't remember half those live action films, but anyways, tell that story of the Disney company, if anything. If you're going to tell it all about Disney movies.
One problem with that. They have that. It's called Walt Disney Presents.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't need a ride about that. I was going to say, you get the essentials. You get The Wizard of Oz. And you get Casablanca. You get those two major films. Those two that are considered the epitome of what movies are. And then you reach a certain point where you can be like, okay, we're just going to do our own things now. We're going to do Star Wars. Star Wars was a big important movie, and we're gonna do Indiana Jones. I don't think they came in that order, but whatever. Those movies are important and changed the way we did film. And you remember those movies, don't you? Because that's kind of also what it is. It's like, remember these movies, and then the other stuff. There's also a lot of stuff in the Great Movie Ride that's just generic stuff, like, it's a gangster movie, or it's the Wild West. These things no one owns the Wild West. That's why it's the Wild West. And no one owns gangster movies. You can just have generic things like that, where there's no specific movie referenced, which I think they did. It's like,
well, here's my, if we're just blue skying terrible ideas, as well as things we'd like to see, I'd make it an Overwatch ride where you're the payload and you're getting escorted through that Hollywood area in the Overwatch map. Because that map has Wild West area and space area, and
a city area.
Yeah, and it covers like a lot of things that are already were in Great Movie Ride.
So what you're saying is you want Blizzard to take over the development of Walt Disney World?
I think that Blizzard World should be real, and I think Disney should work with them.
I think we're getting a little off track. I'm going to pull you back here.
To get you even more off track, though, wouldn't a best of the worst ride be great? You could have someone pointing out, like, and there's Death Wish shooting up a bunch of people.
There's Charles Bronson with a 45.
Bronson. Or
there's Cameron Mitchell.
There's Cameron Mitchell sitting on a chair.
That's right. Yeah. The whole ride could even just be Cameron Mitchell's progression, where it's like, here's young Cameron Mitchell in Westerns doing things, and then here's Cameron Mitchell in the early 70s, where his career isn't going where he thought it would be, and here's Cameron Mitchell in the 80s, where he's drinking himself to death.
And here's Cameron Mitchell.
That's right.
And it's him sitting in the chair from what's it called?
Low Blow.
Low Blow, that's it. And you could be like, here's the Johnson family getting eaten by alligators. It's just
that would be for the full full run.
It could best of the worst land. Take a spin on the wheel of the worst.
Red Letter Media Land.
Red Letter Media Land. Anyways, what we're trying to say is that the icon of this park definitely should not be Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Yes,
but they're trying to change the name to something, and people are like, no one can agree on a name, because Hollywood Studios works perfectly. It doesn't make sense taking away the Hollywood, because we still have all these Hollywood themed areas.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense taking away the word studios, and it can't just be Cinemagine. Like, none of the words make sense. Someone came up with Storyverse. Like, that's not...
But that's what
I know Epcot's not a word, but Storyverse is like a video game title.
There's a small I wouldn't call it a theme park. There is a park in London, Ontario called Storybook Gardens.
Oh yeah.
And the thing you just said made me think of that. But I was going to say devolving into storybook and fantasy type stuff is the Magic Kingdom's job. This is supposed to be about movies. Has there been a Mickey Mouse movie? I'm sure there's been there's never been like a full feature film. Like we've had stuff like Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas. Oh yeah, we have the made for TV garbage.
Yes, they are Mickey Mouse movies or like cartoons that are like a couple minutes long. I mean, there's never been a Mickey Mouse full length feature like Follow That Bird or something. Like we haven't had a movie that's just called like Mickey Mouse the movie or something like that.
Well, because there's the Goofy movie, which was a thing that happened, and that did get like a theatrical release, did it not?
And that's a good movie.
It is a good movie, and it's shocking, but yet Mickey Mouse himself does not have his own movie.
I thought Epic Mickey would be that property to go off of. I mean, that could have been a movie.
Basically, if they were to keep the old Great Movie Ride, what they would do is they would take out the properties that they can no longer afford and just put their own in there, ones that they now own that are staples of cinema, and then update a few of the animatronics, make it look a little better, maybe give it a smoother ride, just because the whole an actor or your guide runs off and then some new person comes along, that doesn't need to be there, and breaks the flow a little bit. So maybe something less Jungle Cruisey as far as that.
Let's move on to Echo Lake, which is sort of the first location that branches off of Hollywood Boulevard. And Frozen for the first time in forever. Now, this theater has had possibly the weirdest history. The Hyperion Theater is sort of that first thing you see when you walk into Echo Lake area. It started off with Superstar Television, which like showed you how television shows for ABC got made, puts you into some of those TV shows. Then we had Doug Live. Remember Doug? And that was a thing. Then we had Get Happy with ABC, where it just showed you clips from upcoming ABC shows. And then we had the American Idol experience, where people from the parks got to actually audition to be in a show. And then you were in one of 3 shows throughout the day. And then the winner, they actually just sang songs, karaoke, and then the winner of that show throughout the day would move on to a final. So there'd be 3 finalists. The winner of that would get a chance to be on American Idol, getting to skip the line in their local location. Eventually it turned into like a cruise, and then eventually they just had no prize because American Idol they just couldn't keep giving out free stuff like that. Anyways, that closed, and now it's Frozen for the first time in forever. Come listen to a tedious 20-minute recreation of Frozen with 2 very annoying hosts. If you're an adult, they're very annoying. And see some of the characters and sing karaoke like you already do in your like shower or whatever. I refuse to watch this show because as much as Frozen was a decent movie that I would not rewatch multiple times, I don't want to sit, and I don't like that entertainment value of, we're not going to show you the movie, we're not going to reenact it like Finding Nemo, we're just going to tell you the plot of it like story time, but try and add this like journey into imagination kind of comedy from like the 90s. We tried to watch it, but we couldn't because we couldn't get past the introduction. It's those two hosts, and they're like, we're the royal storytellers of Arendelle, and they just go, well, here's what happened. Anna woke up and she was a little girl, and then Elsa came out.
Sorry. You looked like you were gonna do the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a 20-minute, very different retelling by two random storytelling people who are the storytellers of Arendelle. They bring out some of the characters. Like, they purposely don't talk about Kristoff's character, and then Kristoff comes out and he's like, what? I was in this story, and it's like, is this funny? Like, who's this for? Oh no, we left out Kristoff, who just actually didn't do that much in the movie, sort of thing. And it's so weird. I don't understand why this is here. I understand why they bring in tons of people to this theater, like multiple times a day, and they fill seats. Let me use some Disney terminology. It's a people eater. It's an attraction that brings in a large number of people to sit in seats and watch a 20-30 minute thing and get them out of the Florida heat and sitting down into a chair, and also out of the queues of other rides that have a lot of lineup time. And there's 5 of these at this park. And this is just one of them. There's also Indiana Jones. There's the Beauty and the Beast show. We have 2 Star Wars shows and 2 different fireworks sort of light show projection shows. Okay.
But the fireworks stuff tends to be the whole park is supposed to come and sit and watch them. Because tons of people go to see these. Things like Fantasmic aren't. It's a people eater, but it's meant to eat like most of the people in the park.
Right. It's the finale of the day at the park.
Sure.
But these other shows like Indiana Jones and these shows have been like Indiana Jones and Beauty and the Beast have been there forever.
Yes.
And they have not changed. What I'm trying to say is this Frozen show and this whole theater is taking up a lot of real estate, like right next to Echo Lake. And not only could you put an attraction there, but you could put something that's not one of these cookie cutter stage shows that we see so often at other other parks.
The way you describe this to me, it's like you say cookie cutter, but I'm like, it sounds like they didn't want to be in the cookie cutter, and they said, we're gonna have 2 hosts who tell the story, and it's gonna be different, but then it's also going to be boring, and we're just gonna do the songs.
When I say cookie cutter, I mean like people come out and go, hey guys, do you want to hear a story?
Oh yeah.
Well, we're gonna do this, and then you do the thing.
But Tyler, man, that is all of Disney.
We don't really see this kind of thing at other parks. At Epcot, we have a lot of sort of themed entertainment at each area, but there's not a massive theater that does a show multiple times a day.
You mean a live show?
A live show. There's not a lot of those.
There is the theater that's next to Journey into Imagination that plays the Pixar songs.
That would typically have a 3D movie or an attraction or something like that. Yeah. And that's at least part of it. Used to be part of the Imagination Institute, but we don't have 3 different reenactment sort of retelling story time shows at a lot of other parks. Magic Kingdom only sort of has one right in front of the castle, and even then nowhere else in the Magic Kingdom are you seeing something like Frozen for the first time in forever. There's a lot of attractions, there's a lot of shows where you sit down and there's animatronics and stuff like that. Like Tiki Room, for example, is a show where you're watching and you're listening to music, but it's not, hey everyone, do you want to hear the story of Moana? We don't see that. Anyways, what I would put in this building if we had to rehab this, I would put something completely original. Like, I don't know, maybe take one of those failed animation ideas that you have or those scripts you're not using and make something new, like something completely original. Just don't use Frozen. Like, we get it. This is Frozen. We're not going to Arendelle. If you're going to make a Frozen ride, take us to Arendelle. Oh, wait, we have that in Epcot. don't just do another show or get rid of this one and make something original. That theater's been there since the park opened. That's no longer what this park's about.
Frozen is the Disney equivalent to Minions. Think about it. It's unwanted. It's for your dumb kids. It keeps getting shoved everywhere it doesn't belong, and I'm sick of looking at it. We're going to move on, because we've been talking a long time about two rides.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. Now, I actually like this show the first time I saw it. It's a long show, and I think we're past the age of stunt show or backlot stunt show.
When we went, you asked me, Tom, do you want to see the Indiana Jones stunt show? And I said, I don't know. Is it good? And you said, it's really long and I don't want to see it. And so I said, all right, then we won't go to see it. So I have seen videos and such that you have shown me of it. Whatever. It's a recreation of the Indiana Jones action scenes that we remember, which I think is fine.
From the first movie, though. This show has not updated since it was introduced at the park. Like, they didn't even include something from the second, third, or fourth movie, and now we have a fifth one that's starting filming in, like, 2019. Are they ever going to update this?
My guess is no, because I want you to name an action sequence that isn't from the first movie.
The minecart chase.
The minecart chase could be done as a roller coaster. I don't think they can do that in a stunt show.
Yes. But I'd love to see, like, a part of the track. Like, if this is how they made it, and here's sort of, like, the backlot of how we filmed it, build one sequence of that track and be like, this is how we actually did it when we filmed it in Temple of Doom. We put them on one piece of track and filmed it multiple times. And then we had a miniature. Like, stuff like that. Or, like, in the third one, we do have there's also the sequence with the bridge in Temple of Doom, which if they could recreate that in that giant stage, like where they're on the bridge and then they cut it and it sort of falls apart. I mean, that'd be weird how they do it in a stage show, but that'd be so cool. Like, there's a lot of memorable moments that I would like to see.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I was going to say is also that a lot of the effects they do replicate are ones that don't rely on editing to save them. Yes. Something like the bridge does rely on editing, because you cut away from them cutting the bridge to an action shot of an actor who is actually tied to some strong suspension cables holding on to a piece of wood, sliding down and hitting something. That requires a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Finesse, as far as the special effects of it goes. The other things, like the fight scene in the plane, those can just be done on hand, because you just have the plane that doesn't look like a plane rotating around. It looked like a starship. It did, because it was like flat and weird, and it didn't look like a plane. But the point is that you can just recreate that by just having it rotate and trying to keep the action there, and then of course having the trapdoor that pulls the guy under. And then the boulder scene is something very easy to replicate. You just have a giant styrofoam boulder that almost hits your actor, and then he just pops up and he's fine.
If the park invokes a feeling of Hollywood, I think this show at least invokes the feeling of Indiana Jones. I mean, like, there's the scene where the spikes come up from the ground and stuff like that, and those temple things, like, try and cut him in half with, like, an axe or whatever. That's not in Indiana Jones specifically. That's just something we familiarize with an adventure serial genre.
Exactly.
But if we could so that's why this show is good and also sort of bad. If I could ride rehab it, I would put in the Indiana Jones ride that's at Disneyland, because as I know it's basically copy and paste Dinosaur, like the exact same track, the exact same vehicles, right. But I still want an Indiana Jones adventure ride, a ride where I feel like I'm in the world of Indiana Jones. If that's what the park's going for, placing you in the movie, I would have like a trackless sort of ride system, something where it feels different. And you maybe make it different. Like, we already have the sort of that temple from the Disneyland ride with the skeleton and the eyeball shooting lasers and the bridge. I'm sure we can put in something different. I'm sure we can tie it into any of those movies. Maybe even that minecart chase. Make that a ride. I'd love to go on a rickety minecart ride through a temple rather than sort of like the motion vehicle that they have. But what would you put in that area?
What would I put in that area? So that area is basically just like a giant open stage, and not even like the back of it is outdoors.
I mean, if you could rehab the show, like,
Well,
would you keep a stunt show with the sort of new theme of the park?
I think I would branch out to other special effects type stuff. Maybe at one point, like, a dinosaur leans down and roars, and then they pull it out, and it reveals it's just, like, the top half of the dinosaur, and the rest is animatronic tubing and stuff like that. Have...
Just more backlot sort of stuff?
More backlot sort of stuff, but with bigger things that more people can appreciate. Because they have that thing where they pull the audience in, and they're the crowd in the fight scene.
Yeah.
But that's so, I don't know, meh to watch. Just because it's just a fight scene that doesn't need to be on this giant set. Basically, what they need is, I mean, I guess the set is part of the action where they're like swing on ropes and stuff like that. But make it less of a stunt show, more of a sort of showcase of the larger things in movies. Why not have like one of those giant fans they use, a wind machine?
Oh yeah. The thing is,
and show people how those work. Have some dude throwing leaves in there, or heck, even here's what Avatar looks like, and it's just like 5 square feet of green screen and some guy in a mocap suit, and then they make a screen come down and they show you the side-by-side comparison of what it looks like. The point is that it needs a technological update, and I would probably drop the Indiana Jones theming, and I would make it more generic movies, and not a stunt show. So what I'm saying is I would destroy the entire thing and replace it with a DVD bonus feature, basically.
The thing is, Universal still has shows like that. What?
I just had the idea. You could have the dogs in the Crystal Fox outfits, and they just run across the... I just think that would be adorable.
Let's move on to the ABC Sound Studio, which used to have the Monster Sound Show, basically backlot how they make sound effects for movies, the One Saturday Morning Sound Show, another sound show. Then we had Sounds Dangerous, which was a binaural audio show, which I actually really liked. It was Drew Carey. He was a spy. You put on headphones, and then they did things in the left and right side of your ear to make it sound like you're getting a haircut, and there's bees in the room and all that kind of stuff. I actually really liked that, because you didn't see a lot of binaural audio stuff, other than Alien or Stitch's Great Escape, as it was called. Then we had basically what we saw, which was Star Wars Path of the Jedi. 10-minute movie. I actually thought it was pretty solid.
You know what? I will give credit to Path of the Jedi that it made the prequels look like they mattered.
Yeah, because it showed how everything tied together.
Yeah.
It's like those fan videos you see online where they show, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, oh, yes, I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. And then it shows the clips like a flashback sort of thing.
Exactly.
I like that. Like, for anyone who doesn't know Star Wars, who's like, okay, what's this whole Star Wars thing about? This is, like, the perfect thing to show them.
Yeah, well, it's the perfect thing to show them to describe the entire series as it has sort of become. I have a few qualms about them putting Rogue One in there, but Rogue One.
It fits within the story.
It fits within the story, but I'll ride Rehab Rogue One at some other point. But Path of the Jedi was lots of fun. I think what elevated it to be beyond just like some fan edit on YouTube was the fact that it had the lights that were synced up to the video screen.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was really
fun.
fun.
In-theater effects. That was
It was a nice. I think it was also in a position where it's right between two larger attractions, or it's at a point where it's nice to sit down and just hang out in the theater. So
yeah.
So that's
it got us into the front
Yeah.
row seats to sit down for a bit.
I can't speak for any of the other things because those are all gone now. And it's not like you can have video of an audio experience. I guess you can have the audio experience, but that requires like...
Oh yeah, you can look up any binaural audio thing on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, I did it we recorded a separate episode about Guardians of the Galaxy, and I actually did some editing to make it sound binaural audio. But regardless, I think that whole building just needs to go, and something else needs to go in. You could fit an entire trackless ride vehicle. That whole area, the theater for Frozen, and let me just finish this bit. Okay, no, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I think... Well, it's going to be my closing statement, so I'm going to let you finish, and you can edit all of this out.
The theater that has Frozen, the celebrity meet and greet with Olaf, and this theater, this whole thing is basically the size of the Great Movie Ride building. you could put in a whole new attraction that wouldn't be a people eater like these two shows and this meet and greet are, but it would definitely be a technological upgrade for the park, and also it wouldn't be just two theaters attached to each other.
I think the ABC theater was pretty small.
It was fairly small because that attraction just ran very quickly.
Path of the Jedi needs to reach a point where you think it would logically conclude, and then it's going to go on for much longer than it needs to.
Let's talk for a moment, just really quick, about the Jedi Training Academy, because we've watched this and we've seen a lot of YouTube clips of kids doing great, hilarious stuff there that they are not like supposed to do. It's not for us. We are two grown men who do not have children. This show is not for us.
Yes.
It's fun to watch something when it goes wrong, obviously, but there's never the guarantee that's going to happen. And it's great to see like Darth Vader and, the Kylo Ren characters come out and fight little children, but it's so not a Star Wars show for us, like that dance-off show used to be, for example.
Exactly.
It's for parents who want to see the kids in the show.
And for the kids to be in the show.
Yeah, like Jack Sparrow's training
show.
It's not really for people, like people passing by can stop and watch it for a second. Mm-hmm. That's probably the most they're going to stop and do it. What would we put there instead, though? I'd put just a straight up show, a Star Wars sort of show, maybe like a reenactment thing.
I think that would need a larger stage.
Well, I mean, like
for fun,
Enchanted Tales with Belle. We reenact the story of
but
bring out Yoda, and we're gonna reenact Star Wars for Yoda.
Don't do that.
Okay. Bring out Rey and be like, we're gonna reenact.
Don't reenact any of the Star Wars. What was I going to say? I was just going to say the most consistent problem is that kids want to join Darth Vader. Just give them the Sith Academy, for Christ's sake.
Give them a bad guy place to do bad guy things.
Let me clarify upon that. I brought this up before, and Tyler Mann said, "Well, you can't encourage things to be doing bad things." That's not what you're doing. All you're doing is taking the same thing and reskinning it. It's the exact same thing. You don't tell kids, "Oh, if you be a bad guy, we're going to be nicer to you, or you're going to get more credits or something." If you're a bad guy, you just get the appreciation of the bad guys instead of the good guys, because there are edgy kids out there like me who would give their right arm to have General Grievous say to me, "You did good today."
I don't remember. Inspirational music underneath this.
But that's all I really have to say, is that one of the wonderful things we have about Star Wars is that we have the light and the dark side, and you get to choose your destiny. But with a lot of the Disney stuff, it feels like you are the good guys, and that's all you get to be.
Speaking of Star Wars, let's move on to the end of Echo Lake. Star Tours: The Adventure Continues. Solid ride, right?
Star Tours is great.
But here's the thing. We're going to have Star Tours, and then the Muppet Courtyard next to it, and then Star Wars Land. I think at some point Star Tours is going to go. It will be... I think they were going to get rid of Star Tours.
Intriguing.
If it's not in Star Wars Land, why are they going to separate it in a different area of the park? If they were getting rid of Muppet Courtyard in the future and connecting these sort of two areas, which, by the way, never do that. Do not get rid of the Muppets, or you will lose a lot of respect from Muppets fans.
Oh no! How will Disney survive losing respect?
Well,
I hope they have a lot of respect in their savings account.
It's the last thing Jim Henson did.
Yes. And look where he is now.
What I'm trying to say is Star Tours is going to go eventually. It doesn't work in that area, and I think I would love to see them move it to Star Wars Land. I think they could still make it work by having a tour there. Like, Star Tours is the name of the touring company you're flying with. It's not Star Wars Tours. It's Star Tours. And I think they could make it work in Batuu, but they're going to have to close the ride down and reopen a new building in Batuu.
I disagree. I think that Star Tours will probably stick around because it is it's one of those older rides that is sort of not gaining traction, but is sort of becoming a staple of the Disney parks. I think because one of the new areas is you you land in Batuu. So then arguably the ship itself could have landed outside of Batuu, and then you make your way into Batuu. It is Star Tours does not need to live in Star Wars land, because it doesn't take place in Star Wars land. It takes place across the galaxy.
Right.
Disney probably, I don't want to say doesn't care, but is less attentive to that level of immersion. Especially with something like Hollywood Studios, where things can clash and you can just be like, oh, it's other movies, except for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, because that doesn't fit in with the theme of movies.
Yes.
Anyways. So I think that can survive. Let's say if we had to rehab Star Wars, or Star Tours, not Star Wars, Star Tours.
Yes.
It's hard to say, because I know there's so many variants. This is a crazy thought. But maybe do even more randomization. I know it would require building more things. There's no humanoid droid for the new series, is there? We have BB-8, who's the new R2-D2, but we don't have a new C-3PO.
No.
But the point is that I'd love to have one where it's like the screen comes up and K2SO is there or something like that, or even that could be tied into the story, where it's like K2SO is like, I have commissioned this ship in order to get me to my home base or something like that, and then you have a different droid, or the Pee Wee Herman droid, Rex. You could have him piloting it. I know that requires having like interchange. I guess no. Yeah, I was about to say never mind. You can't have interchangeable animatronics. So
that would be a crazy amount of technology.
That's the thing. I mean, maybe it could be done with modern stuff, but I doubt it. And I think it would be too time consuming and too painful.
You need a mini American Adventure. You know how the stages go down and then move into like sort of this like slot system?
I was almost thinking of like the droids are on a rotating spoke, and then when one droid is needed, it goes zzz, and then the wall comes in, and then it's like, wow, would you look at that? And then whatever. It's hard to rehab Star Tours, because the point of rehabbing is to improve upon a ride. And Star Tours is already a really good ride, and there's not much I can be like, well, this sucked. Maybe a better queue? Maybe a funner, more interactive queue?
Well, the outside is still themed to like a movie studio, because you can see sort of Endor trees, but you see like the back of them is still made out of like scaffolding.
Sure.
And there's for some reason an AT-AT, which does not belong in Endor. And you also see like parts of that are like being held up in a weird way. The queue for the outside at least still doesn't look like Star Wars. It looks like the set outside of Star Wars.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
But
and then we have that show, but let's not get started with that.
Well, I was going to say, but we want that for this specific one, because we want to be like, this is the movie, and then Star Wars Land is the land. That's where you go, where Star Wars is real.
Yeah. You know what I'd do?
What?
Because it's the exact same motion simulator system, bring back Body Wars from Wonders of Life Pavilion. I mean, it's a motion simulator. You could sort of just strip it down and put in anything else.
That's true.
Like, okay, so let's move on to Muppets for a second so I can come back to this building and what you can do with it.
I was going to say that brings up a whole new thing. Maybe we'll loop back again and do a whole episode on Star Tours and what theoretically the ride, if the Star Wars theme was stripped away of, what could it become after that?
Yes. Muppets Courtyard, which was originally going to be a whole Muppet land. Jim Henson actually worked on this project. It was going to be Muppet Vision 3D. There was going to be a ride called the Great Muppet Ride. It was going to be the movie ride,
but with Muppets.
But with the Muppets replacing characters. It would have been great.
That would have been great. You know what? That would have been better than Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. If you were to make the Great Movie Ride with the Muppets, you have the built-in defense of being a parody, where you can say, we don't owe you anything because we are parodying your movies. We are not actually remaking your movies.
Yeah, like Mary Froggins. It's like Mary Poppins, but just with a frog.
But Disney owns Mary Poppins. It would be like...
yeah, it could be like...
The Muppet of Oz.
Oh. Both of those were great. And there's actually already a Muppet Oz movie.
There you go.
But anyways, Muppet Vision 3D, I think, is still a really good show. You watched it multiple times because it's also just... It was when Grand Avenue was actually sort of soft opening, so there were not a lot of people actually walking down that area. And don't even get me started on Grand Avenue. I'm sure we'll talk about that in some capacity. But Muppet Vision 3D is good, but it never changed because it was one of the last things Jim Henson actually worked on before he passed away. So a lot of those things are still great, like Statler and Waldorf addressing the fact that they're bolted to the seats because their animatronics is wonderful. Sweetums coming out and being a face character walking around is wonderful. Someone in our party just loves the Muppets so much and freaked out because I did not tell them Sweetums existed in the show. The queue, oh my gosh, the queue is full of sight gags and the key under the mat bit. Like, everything about this show works so perfectly because the people from Muppets worked on it themselves.
Yes. Well, that was what I was going to say. That still has the charm that the Muppets have. That sense of humor and that energy to it that was just so distinct in the Muppets. And this ride still has all of that.
That pre-show movie is 15 minutes long because it's the same length as the actual movie itself. And that pre-show movie does not get boring. It's essentially just the Muppet Show. Like, they're just doing gags with all the TVs. And that was great.
I was about to say you're wrong. It does get boring when you watch it a second time and have to stand up.
Yes.
That's the one detriment, is that you have to stand. I also think another detriment is that Sweetums comes out during the pre-show.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an attempt by one of our party members to interact with them, but it was clear that they are not meant to interact with the people there. They're just meant to come out, do a bit, and then go back in.
As if to preview the fact that this is sort of like the backstage area for the Muppets, and here's one of them. Yes.
And I think that could have been not done better, but I think that that's a unnecessary detail. And while it's fun, I guess we have a very special case where our compatriot is a person who pushes interactivity, and maybe that's a unique scenario, but it's a point at which people might try to interact with that character, and the character ends up just having to ignore them.
Sweetums is only in there for like a couple seconds.
Yeah.
The fact that our friend tried to interact and it failed was just something that I think only happens with our party, because kids would just go, oh, Sweetums, and then by the time they do that, they're gone.
But it's entirely possible that a kid might go, Sweetums, over here, and then the Sweetums just ignores them. They don't even have like pre-recorded audio of Sweetums going, sorry, I have a job to do, or something like that, which would help a lot. If even if they say sorry, but I can't interact with you because we don't have enough voice lines, then that's fine. Just some way of Sweetums acknowledging that there is an audience there, other than just
walking in their mouth wide open and then walking out.
Exactly.
What I do to the movie, though, if I have to rehab it, is just even like, I don't even know if there's ever been like an HD upgrade, like if they went back to the original film or even just updated the special effects, because what's old feels very old. Like Waldo, the Spirit of 3D, is just the 3D is so not up to date.
Yes.
And for a little kid, that would no little kid I think is gonna go, oh, this is garbage. But no kid.
I'm sorry. I'm just picturing two kids in like your classic kids in like baseball caps and t-shirt, and they're just sitting there, and one of them leans over to the other. This whole thing is garbage.
Like a 3-year-old kid, I can't believe my mom paid money for this.
Yeah, exactly.
But Waldo should definitely be updated. I think doing a whole new movie would be great. You could do all the same gags you've already done before. And I love the theater itself as part of the show. Like having the arrows come out of the wall and having the explosions and parts of the wall disappearing. When I was a kid, I was like, how are they going to do another show after this? The walls are gone. Like, I didn't, as a kid, I believed it.
Yes.
And that was what was great.
Yes.
Because other 3D shows, they don't really have that sort of thing. This theater works perfectly for that. Especially with like the projector or the cannon that comes out of it and everything.
everything about the Muppet Vision 3D, every detail and everything that happens feels like an extension of the movie, and that this entire space was meant to entertain you, not just the screen, not just the animatronics.
It's not a movie that was shoved into this theater.
Exactly.
This theater was designed for this movie.
And that's what makes it great.
If I could change anything, though, maybe take out Waldo. I mean, I like the spirit of 3D sort of thing, but Waldo he gets really annoying.
Well, I think that might be the magic of, you can use all the original footage and stuff, and then reanimate a new character in there.
Yeah.
It'll still be called Waldo, but you can change the voiceover dialogue and such, and it will be less annoying or something.
I'd like to see the new characters, though. Like, I guess Walter is pretty much the only one, but Walter, Deadly, the bear character. Like, I want to see all these newer characters that we haven't seen in the Muppets a lot. Mm-hmm. I want to see them in this movie. So I'd like to see a brand new Muppet movie. I don't think you could take the Muppets out of this theater, though.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, the one problem that Disney has with this ride is that because the movie and the theater are so intertwined, it's very difficult to change one without changing the other.
Yeah.
And then changing the physical theater would require probably a lot of structural reworks.
A lot of downtime.
Exactly. You know how it's at the end, it crashes through a wall, and it's meant to be like you're looking outside to
the fire truck comes in.
What's going to happen instead is that early in the movie, it's going to crash through, and stormtroopers are going to run in, and the Muppets are going to suddenly be in Star Wars because Star Wars.
If I could just suggest something,
yes.
This has been debated because Grand Avenue is sort of been designed specifically to be like a lineup area just to get into Star Wars land. Mm-hmm. I would love to see Muppet Vision temporarily replaced with Muppets Present a history of Star Wars, like the Muppets reenacting the Star Wars movies in like a couple minutes each. I would love that. That would be great. So even if you can't get into Star Wars land, or you're waiting to line up in Grand Avenue, like something Muppet Star Wars, like an inflatable screen should pop up and play a movie or something like that.
Yeah.
I would love that. I would love a Muppet Star Wars movie. I think it would be so funny.
Okay.
I do want to say one thing about Pizza Rizzo, because it used to be Pizza Planet, but now it's Pizza Rizzo, the best pizza on the planet, which is a sign outside because they needed to add that little homage to Pizza Planet. But that building is not really Muppets themed. When we went in, we were sort of like, this is sort of a lack of theming. Pizza Planet used to have an arcade in it, and it was themed to Pizza Planet. But in this case, I think they just needed a lot of restaurant space because a lot of people are not going to be able to go into Star Wars land. They are going to need to go to the first restaurant that's there. 1, Baseline Tap House. 2, Pizza Rizzo. Those are going to be your 2 quick service. Grab a beer, get drunk, and eat some mediocre pizza, because that's what that place is for. It's just a bigger space that they took the arcade out of to accommodate for Star Wars land. Let's move on to what is most likely not going to be Pixar Place. All 3 buildings that it's sort of taking up, like the main one, the adjacent building, and then what's basically going to be like the back area where everything else is lined up. All of that actually used to be working studios. Mm-hmm. And the backlot studio tour would start on the left side. It would go through sort of like the special effects tank, and then you actually walked through both of those buildings.
Right.
You could actually see, like, if you look at Google Maps, you could see the one sort of suspended hallway on a second floor that went across all these buildings all the way into Walt Disney Presents, which is also now gone. Like, all of that is gone because Pixar Place is basically going to get closed off. It's going to be a back hallway for Toy Story Mania, and Toy Story Mania's facade is then going to be on the opposite side where Toy Story Land is going to be. Yeah. I like Toy Story Mania, though.
Toy Story Mania was fun. It's one of the few rides that's really interactive.
Yes, we talked about this before. The difference between interaction and immersion.
Yes,
and this one being one of the most interactive ones.
Yes, and interactive in a way that doesn't feel horribly dated, like Spaceship Earth, where it's like the horrible touchscreen and the terrible photo. and the vision of the future.
It's a future laser blasting ride. It's like Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, but this time it's all with video screens, and it's 3D, which is another added level of really awesome when like a pie hits you in the face and sort of stuff.
Yeah. That being said, it's kind of a forgettable ride.
It is, because it doesn't have story.
Yes, and the other, I guess arguably it's an arcade. You don't need story. You just want to be able to beat your friends. I will say, I have been on several rides where you have a gun and you shoot. This was probably one of the most accurate ones I've had. One that was
the aiming.
The aiming was consistent, and I was very impressed because I was expecting it to be hot garbage, but turned out okay.
It is good. They even released it as an actual video game on Wii, where the aiming was not accurate.
I was going to say, anything that gets ported to Wii will always be worse than the way it was before.
It was just the main menu was bad. But yeah, I think there could be a story added in. That's the thing about Toy Story Land, is that it's a lack of story. Because, I mean, other than the word story in the title of the land, Slinky Dog Dash just has, Andy made a roller coaster, and Slinky's on it. Yeah, that's it. And then Alien Swirling Saucers. Andy built a Alien Swirling Saucers ride. And this one, Andy built a Midway for his toys to play in.
If I may, I'm okay with there not being much story. Yes, it means that the park suffers a little bit. But if you think about playing with toys through a child's perspective, sometimes there isn't a story. Sometimes they just want to shoot at things, like in the Midway. Or sometimes they just want to build a roller coaster. It doesn't have to work. They just want to build it. I mean, this one obviously does work because it's a real roller coaster. But the point is that it doesn't need a story. And the other thing is that the story of Toy Story is so specific to a singular person that it's difficult to separate the story from that and tell your own story without the fact that these are Andy's toys.
Well, like Star Wars is about characters, but what they're doing with their land is making it general enough that it's Star Wars, but you're still experiencing some kind of Star Wars story.
Exactly.
And in this one, the idea is that to be with the toys, or to experience it with other toys, you have to be the size of a toy, meaning you are the toy, and it's your toy story. And here's just other things that are in Andy's backyard, as an example. I don't know if you can make it a story. I mean, obviously those video screens can be changed out with anything. Mm-hmm. You could say, hey everyone, we're going to open up the Buzz Lightyear toy set. Okay, well here's our Midway. We have to defeat Surg. Like, just something simple like that just adds that level of immersion, I guess. It's very clear we're in a Midway vehicle and we're going through all these video screens and stuff. But
right.
Anyways, it's the most interactive. Mm-hmm. But it still works, and I really like it. I wouldn't change it out, because with Toy Story Land going in there, obviously we could talk about what we would change in Toy Story Land, but we'll have to wait for that to actually open up.
Oh, yes.
And for us to go in there to do an episode like that.
When is Star Wars Land set to open?
2019.
2019? We could probably do a full retrospect of the Star Wars franchise for the opening of Star Wars Land.
Yeah, in a year.
In a year, yeah. Well, if we're even still doing this in a year. But anyways, we're going to move on.
Moving on to the Animation Courtyard. How about that Little Mermaid puppet live-action laser video screen show?
Oh, actually, you know what? I was okay with that. That was pretty good.
This was sort of like the lasers above us.
That's right, and then it looks like the water goes over us. Yeah.
The puppeteering is great. It's that black light sort of people's players, which is a Canadian thing.
Oh yes. I think visually the show, and technically the show, is incredible. Do we have a scene where Ariel's legs turn into fins, or just at some point does she just like disappear from the audience view and then her legs show up?
To be completely honest, I've seen this 3 times and I don't remember.
All right.
If we see her transform or not.
Then my guess is that we do not, because if we did, I feel like that would be a spectacular effect that they show us.
Yeah.
The only thing that bothered me about this show was the big Ursula boss fight at the end, where they get into the plot of Little Mermaid. I'm like, all right, I'm following what's going on, and then it cuts to Ursula, and it just like it does a clip show of what happens in the movie, and then just projections of laser Ursula laughing, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
It basically
it's
has to
very
take.
vague what
Yeah, I was gonna say
happens.
it takes basically the entire third act and just like turns it into a nonsensical series of images and Ursula laughing in lasers.
It's called The Little Mermaid. It's not called The Very Large Evil Octopus Lady.
That's true, I guess.
It is focusing on Ariel. They did cut it. Like, that show is different than all the other ones. It's not a 15-minute retelling.
Yeah.
It's like 7 minutes. Like, it's so condensed. It's less than like a SpongeBob episode.
I was about to say, they cut out the entire conflict of that movie. They cut out her
a whole bit with her voice, yeah.
Yeah, and they also cut out the fact that Ursula disguises herself as a princess and then becomes a horrible tentacle sea witch later. That's all cut out of that. Could you imagine the fun you could have with the visual effects of a lady who reveals that she's an octopus? That would be such a great effect.
That would be. What I would change about this is, once again, it's another one of those shows where they bring in a large amount of people and then they get them in and out and sitting on chairs. It's a people eater show. I would just get rid of this entirely. I think this whole animation area, or the animation courtyard, used to be a working animation studio. And it's not that anymore. Like, that is entirely gone. But the size of these buildings, like Disney Junior Live on Stage, The Voyage of the Little Mermaid, Star Wars Launch Bay, which I don't even want to start talking about. I just want to say get rid of all of this, because this could be a whole new area. If you're going to keep it Animation Courtyard, this is where Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway should have been. Mm-hmm. This is where you can put basically a whole animated area. Like, what if we had every princess's cottage or something? Or Tiana's restaurant, for example. Like, this would be the perfect place to put that. Stuff that we recognize from animated movies. Or like a Big Hero 6 motion simulator attraction. Just, if you got rid of all of these things, you have so much room for so much animated film potential. Because this is Star Wars is going to be Star Wars and Lucasfilm, and Toy Story sort of is that Pixar representation. And we have sort of these other Hollywood areas, but animation, you could cover so many of the like over 50 Disney animated movies that you have. Or this would be like, I think I've shown you a bit of what Mickey and the Magical Map looks like on YouTube, for example. That's the one with Yen Sid and sort of that very epic Mickey vibe with the paintbrush. Mm-hmm. A show like that would fit here perfectly, but I think it's time to get rid of... I don't know if that animation building is still being used, because there's like 3 adjoining buildings attached to it, but that would be the perfect time to... I think that's going to be the next phase. Phase 1 is Toy Story Land, Phase 2 is Star Wars, Phase 3 is going to be this area, because once Star Wars Land opens, Launch Bay is going.
Yes.
And because we're then going to have a place to buy all our Star Wars stuff is going to be in Star Wars Land.
I was about to say, Launch Bay's not even a place to buy it all. Oh, no, it is, isn't it? It's the end of Star Tours. No, it's not the end of Star Tours.
Star Tours also has a place to buy it, but
yeah.
Launch Bay had the meet and greets.
I was going to say, Launch Bay feels like a placeholder. Launch Bay feels like something that is temporarily here until they can find something better to put there.
After the animation studio closed, this was a meet and greet area. The actual place where the animators animated behind the glass, that was gone. They made it a meet and greet. Then they got rid of that, and now it's Launch Bay to tide you over with Star Wars until Star Wars Land opens.
Yes.
But that's what I'd do to
Placeholder.
Animation Courtyard, and I'm sure we could do a whole thing about what we'd put in there, like what land we'd open, but that'll be a whole separate thing.
Since we discussed it, let's move on to Launch Bay, because it's right next to Little Mermaid, right?
I have nothing to say. It's Launch Bay. We met Kylo Ren. He was scary. I want to get rid of that whole area.
Okay, that's fair. I will briefly...
Yeah, I'm sure you want to talk about
Well, yes, I was going to say, Launch Bay was a thing that I liked because, 1, I'm a nerd, 2, I'm a loser, and 3, I'm sexually attracted to Kylo Ren. And so I like the museum quality it has, where it has the miniatures from the thing, and it has the all the different lightsabers that the bad guys have used. I don't know why they don't have one for the good guys as well. They should. The meet and greets or whatever, you can put those wherever. But I liked the museum-y feel of it. And I want more museums, and I know
our Epcot episode where you said you wanted more museums or art galleries and stuff like that.
With Star Wars, where the special effects and especially the practical effects are such a big part of it, I think you have something there where you can be like, here's the Crystal Fox animatronic that we used, and here's what happens when we peel back the the crystalline skin layer. And here's all the working pieces and how we made it move, and then we just CGI'd over it and you couldn't tell. So Launch Bay, as far as I'm concerned, it's a placeholder, so it doesn't need to be improved, it just needs to be removed and replaced with something better, so we don't have to talk about it very much. Moving on.
Disney Junior is... I have nothing bad to say about that, because it's a show for kids and it works. The puppeteering is very good, and it's like 4 different stories, so I think that's cool. I don't have anything wrong with it.
That was the thing that shocked me, was the puppeteering. You pulled up a video, and I was like, I don't want to watch this. This is Disney Junior. I'm going to have literally nothing to say. And the Mickey puppet popped up, and I was like, ooh, look at that.
It was very impressive.
I was impressed, and then I got bored again and stopped paying attention.
Let's move on to Sunset Boulevard. So this is the street that branches off of Hollywood Boulevard. Again, Sunset Boulevard is based on an actual Hollywood location.
Oh yeah, I know.
And the shops there are really great. But the big thing about it, and I'm not actually going to talk about Tower of Terror, I'm going to talk about the Streetmosphere characters.
Oh, yes.
Because
so that's where this is.
so much
Gotcha.
fun. This is one of those areas where, like, the Main Street characters sort of carry over to Hollywood studios. These people, when they embody this character, this character exists only for them. No one else plays this character. They sort of create and live that character every day. And you'll see so many great characters, like the guy who's trying to direct people as he walks by. And what did he say about you?
He's as I passed by, this was by myself, not when we were in a group. I just happened to be passing by, and he pointed the camera at me and said, "How will this young man ever find enough hair product to sustain his look?" And I thought that was funny. And I wish I had looked at the camera and gone, "How will I ever find enough hair product to sustain my look?" And then continued on. But instead I just ran my hands through my hair and ran dramatically off.
And that's what I was going to talk about, actually,
yes.
is what level of interaction you should do back with them. There's another great character who... in a great video that I saw recently, he was trying to hail a taxi of strollers that were passing by, and he's like, "I'm not gonna be able to fit in this," and eventually he sat in someone's stroller, like almost on top of a kid, and then they wheeled off, and that was great. I specifically encountered these 2 ladies who were sort of gossiping about things that were happening in Hollywood, but mostly the people that stopped to watch them. And they did not acknowledge that these people were here. I made the mistake of asking them, "Hey, what do you think about my outfit?" And they went, "Who are you? We're trying to have a conversation here." And I went, "Oh, I should not be interrupting.
Yes.
This is not the kind of interaction where I should be initiating it." Because a lot of people who go to these parks, they don't want to start the interaction.
Yes.
They wait for other people to do things with them, and then they feel embarrassed. Like, that's sort of the point of the Streetmosphere characters.
I was going to say, that's the one sticking point with the Streetmosphere characters with me, is, yes, they initiate the interaction, but then how far is that interaction allowed to go? Because it could just be the director points a camera at you and makes fun of you, or it could be the director points a camera at you, makes fun of you, and then you and your friends perform a little movie for him. Just this, like, you sit there for a minute, and he's like, "All right, what you're going to do is you're going to say this, and you're going to stand there, and you're going to go there, and I'm going to pan the camera over, and you're going to do all these things."
Well, they have all these characters, especially at meet and greets, they have their own idea of what they're going to do when you approach them. Like when you meet Star-Lord at Walt Disney Presents, for example, he has his own little bit that he's doing, for example. He's like, "Hey, come up here and meet Groot." And then when I tried to interact with Groot in my own way, he started asking me questions, and I'm like, "Oh, well, I am not as prepared as Star-Lord is to have this conversation."
Yes.
And I don't know where I'm going to go with it.
Yes.
And with the Streetmosphere, there is some times where they ask you questions, and then you get to interact, which feeds their interaction so they can continue to talk to you. But when it comes to the way I did it, it was not good. I tried to initiate the interaction, and they clearly had their own little story going on where they can't see us, but they can talk about us. But I started talking to them, and it didn't work. That being said, they still did make fun of me. They said, "You know what's really bad? People who wear socks, but then roll it all the way back down to their shoes," because I had like long socks, but I rolled them back down to my ankles. And they were making fun of that, and that was pretty funny. But at the same time, I felt embarrassed that I tried to start something and they did not follow through, and I went, oh, well, I feel like the fool. But that's what they're meant to do. They're meant to be like, you're a weirdo, and then walk away.
That's what I like about them, is that they are one of the few characters at the parks who are allowed to make fun of guests.
Yes. Let's move on to the next thing, which is the Beauty and the Beast live show, which is one of those condensed things where it's the whole movie, but sort of like, it's not even condensed, it's more so highlights, like picking out the songs that are good from the movie and just performing those. Again, this is a show that holds a lot of people. It has basically really only had Beauty and the Beast. Before that was just this Hollywood show. There was Dick Tracy, which we watched
Dick
recently.
Tracy!
And we were like, this was a thing? Shout out to TPM Vids. And then we had Hollywood's Pretty Woman, which ran for like 2 months. And then we had this Beauty and the Beast show. And this Beauty and the Beast show has been there since 1991, basically since I was born. I've seen it too many times. Getting in and out of that theater, I do not enjoy. If I could change it to something else, I don't know, maybe a new ride or something more Hollywood themed, like maybe make it look like Hollywood Hills. I know we already have the Hollywood Hills Amphitheater, which is specifically Phantasmic, but I would prefer to have something like, I don't know, if this is your Hollywood street, maybe the Great Movie Ride, like maybe a ride about movies. Like, put in something movie-themed. The shops there are pretty standard, and that sort of quick service place that we ate at had probably the best, like, loaded potato that we ever had. But that show is just, it's the same. I use the term cookie cutter again. It's, let's retell Beauty and the Beast. Here's Beauty and the Beast. Be our guest. Remember, be our guest? We've extended it with a crazy dance sequence. And I've seen it far too many times. It still entertains a lot of people throughout the day, but I'd prefer something else. And like I said, this is a good place to put maybe Great Movie Ride. I mean, there's not a lot of room where that theater is, but Great Movie Ride would be great there. What about you?
I don't care about Beauty and the Beast. I don't care about this show. I'm sure it's a quality show. I'm sure some hardworking professionals put it on. Some solid dancers, some maybe solid actors.
We should probably specify that about these shows. We don't hate the people in the shows are giving 110%
absolutely.
every time.
Well, we don't know that for sure. For all we know, they could go backstage and be like, sick of doing this dance.
The actors in these shows are giving it their all.
As far as we can tell, the underpaid actors in this show I'll say it again. The underpaid actors in this show are doing their best. Whether they are professional actors, dancers, so on and so forth, or not, remains to be seen. I assume they are. But regardless, we are not criticizing the quality of the performance. We are criticizing the rudimentary nature of the productions and the repetitive nature of them as well.
Yes. Let's move on to Rock and Roller Coaster, which is probably the only representation of music at this park, like, in terms of Hollywood.
Yes.
We have a lot of movies, we had TV, which is sort of gone by now, but this represents sort of music, because the entrance of this ride specifically is a record label. It's G-Force Records.
Yes.
And, I mean, Aerosmith is one of those bands that was popular. They're popular now. I don't know if they're still going to be this popular in the future.
If I may, I think the problem with music is that it's one of those few things that really shifts quickly.
Yes.
It's not like movies where a movie has a resonating effect on things henceforward. Music has a similar thing, but the artists themselves are more transitionary. Where, yes, rock and roll is a very specific period and movement in music, but there's a bunch of different rock and roll artists, all with sort of equal levels of fame. Why Aerosmith? Why not Queen? Or why not the Beatles? Presumably because Aerosmith, all of them were still alive when they made this ride, and so that's why they did it, unlike Queen and the Beatles.
I mean, most of it was just for the pun, right? Rock and Roller Coaster.
Sure. Sure, but the other thing is that you could literally not have a band at all and just be like, we're a radio broadcast system, and here's the hot ticket music that's been put in movies so far. And then
brings me to my rehab.
Yes.
I'd say to get rid of Aerosmith, as great as they are, you can still keep Aerosmith in the ride. But the pre-show where you're being introduced
God, it's so bad.
to the manager, it feels so rushed, right? Like it feels like they filmed it. I mean, it is filmed in one take, but it's only like 40 seconds long.
But no, well, I was going to say, it feels like it was filmed in one take and one take only. They were like, well, that's what we got. We can't make these guys any better actors. Or this lady who might be their actual manager a better actress. 'Cause she was bad. She was so bad. She was worse than Steven Tyler, and that was shocking to me.
I'd say get rid of them altogether, though, and introduce one new, maybe celebrity cameo, or just any actor, really, who can act, and have them be like, I'm the head of G-Force Records, and you're my band. If this is the whole thing of, you are going to be in Hollywood. You are the band. They load you into, like, smaller pre-show rooms where you're not, like, 40 people, but... Obviously, you could keep the whole idea of, like, the stretch limo. The idea that we're calling you the biggest limo we could find, and it being a stretch limo, and that's the ride vehicle.
I think that's
great.
Yes.
I like that. I like the whole theme of you go into the alley, and you're launching down the highway. Like, all that stuff feels pretty good. I would make it, you are the band, and we need to get you to your concert. And so... this music is what you said before. The music that's playing is a radio. You're tuning into KRNR, the rock station, for driving down the highway. And then the song that plays is always different. Because we have Aerosmith songs that are always different.
Yes.
This one would be a different rock band every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be you, the band, singing, but
Exactly.
it could be a different song. In that case, you could use Queen. You can use other bands like, I don't know, Green Day, or they're not rock, but any other rock band.
When you leave the ride, isn't it like a red carpet thing?
Yeah, it's a red carpet, and you were seeing an Aerosmith concert on the screens. So you could be any concert, really, but it should show you on the screen.
I was going to say, what you could have, and maybe this is a little too much, but you have a room with like a green screen. They would have like miscellaneous props like that. And then what you do is you have the guests come in, they put all that on, and you have them mime that stuff, and then you edit a background into them and put them on stage in the exit area.
Considering that we have the technology to understand which photo gets attached to the person sitting in that seat using your magic band.
Exactly.
That kind of technology is absolutely possible. And that green screen stuff, you could do that so easily now.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing is that you'd have to load people into these rooms. They'd have a time limit, but we have that with Test Track, where you sort of have a time limit to design something personalized.
Yes, the difference here is that they have like costume pieces, and I guess unlike Test Track is that it would be separated rooms, more like a character meet and greet where it rotates around, and they have multiples of these rooms that you go into, but they all have basically the same props and such. But then again, I guess there's the problem of letting guests touch thing, and
you have to spray stuff.
The moment the public becomes involved, things become pricier and more breakable. I think we may revisit the Rock and Roller Coaster.
Yes, because I think there's so much room in that area.
Yes.
For anything else, and I think we could talk a lot about what we would put in there.
Well, I was going to say I think the point of rehabbing something isn't to tear the entire thing down and then replace it with a new ride. The idea is to take what we have existing and change it. In this case, you could even just strip away the entirety of the Rock and Roller Coaster theme and replace it with just another coaster.
And other parks are getting that. Like, we're getting an Iron Man ride, which is just going to be a reskin, essentially a rehab of Rock and Roller Coaster.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same track and everything. It's just going to be the whole theme is changed.
Yes.
And yeah, you could do that with a lot of rides here.
Oh, yeah.
Star Tours, Rock and Roller Coaster. We're absolutely going to revisit just reskinning a lot of things by stripping away what's there existing rather than changing it. Before we end this episode, we just want to give a shout out to all the people on Twitter and from WDWNT staff who gave some suggestions. Swede Meatball, who says American Idol and Drew Carey soundstage should be torn down, and maybe put a place where the Osborne lights could be again. And honestly, we thought that was going to be Grand Avenue, but that's not happening. Jesse Ed 06264739 says everything. Rehab everything. Dreaming of Disney says the live show selection, which is what we talked a lot about, which is like the Frozen show and the Star Wars training and everything. Endsider1 on Twitter said, lose the launch bay and Voyage of the Little Mermaid, connect the two buildings and make a massive new indoor dark ride, possibly resurrecting the Wreck-It Ralph concept from the Magic Kingdom.
All right.
Yeah, like Sugar Rush Racing or any of those other things.
Sure.
Northeast Nate says the whole old animation area, Little Mermaid show, old loading area for the tram ride, demo that whole area and make it again about animation, comic drawing, character meet and greet, and add a Roger Rabbit spinning ride. Or a new stage show.
Roger Rabbit! Of course! Why? What? We're so
Acme.
stupid! Roger Rabbit is 1, about movies, 2, about animation, 3,
about
has Disney characters,
4 is in Hollywood.
boom! Make a goddamn Roger Rabbit ride!
Yeah, there's the existing cartoon spin ride where you're in sort of that ride vehicle and it spins around and it has all those cool show scenes and stuff, but I would love a brand new updated one with original animation and everything like that.
Even the Great Movie Ride could be a Roger Rabbit ride where you get in the animated taxi because it blends animation, Hollywood, or it blends that fictitious Hollywood, it blends animation, and it blends the almost Streetmosphere characters with Bob Hoskins' character, where it's like, it's sort of, well, it takes place in the 50s, right?
Yes.
So
Golden Age of Hollywood.
Exactly. It fits perfectly, and it brings everything together.
Who framed the Great Movie Ride?
Who framed the Great Movie Ride?
Remember me? When I destroyed the Great Movie Ride? I sounded just like this!
Okay, that was a bit loud.
That's a great suggestion, so thank you, Northeast Nate. The idea of Roger Rabbit is something we didn't even fathom, honestly, before.
Thank you so much.
We have some other people who are saying that Muppets in Indy are just stale. That's true. Rock and Roller Coaster needs it bad.
Yeah.
Refreshing Fantasmic. We are going to talk about Fantasmic later.
Yes.
But Pathogen Zero says, bring back the animation area and revamp one of the store Vogue to be villains in Vogue again. The thing is, a lot of the stores, they don't really stand out a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like the exit area of Star Tours where they have a lot of just, it looks like, for some reason, Tatooine, but it also looks like a backlot, and it's also has just the generic place to buy Star Wars stuff.
Who cares?
A lot of shops are pretty standard. We are going to move from this abandoned animation studio. I think we have like a hotel reservation.
Yeah,
we
do.
Check in for.
We gotta check it. Is that a door? That door wasn't there before, was it?
I've never noticed that.
There's a light coming from between the cracks in the door. I think it's calling to us. We have to go. We have to go to the light.
Tom, don't.
We have to.
Tom, where are you going?
I'm going through the door.
Tom?
I'm going. Oh my god.
Tom!
Oh my god!
Tom, no! Oh my god. Oh my god. I don't know what happened to Thomas, but I'm out here by myself. And this door, it's calling to me. Be sure to visit riderehab.com. We have a lot of t-shirts and hats that are now available, including Barrelin' Over Canada, as well as a Ride Rehab logo, and tons of other merch we're going to add in the future. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ride Rehab, as well as Instagram, where we're going to post some of our artwork and covers and photos from our own Disney archive. Also, be sure to visit wdwnt.com, and remember, new episodes are up the 7th of every month. Normally Tom yells 7, but he's not here right now. 7. So thanks a lot for listening. I gotta go after Tom. I gotta be brave. I gotta be strong. No!